It's me, the Baking Realtor, here, back from the dead, if you will. I was sick the week before Christmas when I did a blog post, so I wasn't able to really elaborate on it. So I'm assuming some of you, if not all of you, did not see my blog post because it was a busy time of the year. So I thought I would take a couple minutes to talk about buyer's myths, mistakes, and marvelous moments. The first one is a phrase that I love to hate. I can't tell you how many buyers tell me, well, I don't want to bother you, or I went to this open house, or I called this phone number because I didn't want to bother you. I love you because you're considerate, but also, this is my job. When I decided to be a realtor, I knew that it would be 7 days a week, hopefully not 24 hours a day, but I already know that nights and weekends and kind of weird times of the day, I have to be available for you, especially in this market. So please never worry about bothering me, because that's my job. That's, what I get paid to do is be there for you and help you along the way. So that's number one. Number two, the biggest mistake people make is going to see houses or going to open houses without first meeting with a lender. So I get it. Looking at houses can be a lot of fun, and that's usually where people go first when they decide, while they're deciding if they want to buy a house or not, is, I'll look online or I'll go to some open houses. But it's very important that you first meet with a lender to know what you're approved for. I can't tell you how many times buyers have told me, I make enough money, or I'm not worried about getting a loan. I'm not necessarily saying that I'm worried that you're not going to be able to get approved for a loan, but there are so many more factors that go into getting pre-approved versus just making enough money. So having a conversation with a lender, typically it doesn't take very long. Sometimes you can even get pre-approved or pre-qualified over the phone. So take that first step, because the biggest thing is when we write an offer, sellers aren't even going to look at your offer if there isn't a pre-approval letter with it. So I would rather have everything up front and ready to go when we start looking at houses versus looking at houses, finding the perfect one, and then having to backtrack and try and get in touch with your lender and just rush the process of getting that piece of paper. So just do it up front. Another common question is, not a lot of people understand what a buyer agency agreement is. So bottom line, if you want me to represent you, this is a contract that we need to sign. And it sounds scary and it sounds illegally because it's a contract. But the benefit is I work for the seller until that form is signed. It's just the way that it is. Every agent, unless you have a buyer agency agreement signed, technically is supposed to represent the seller. And, finally buyers were like, well, who's looking out for us? So that's why the buyer agency agreement was created, so that an agent on the selling side can have their listing agent protecting their needs, and then the buyer on the buying side has an agent to protect the buyer's needs as well. So another one that kind of goes into the whole buyer agency agreement is never ever call the agent on the for sale sign if you want to see a house. Don't do it. Never do it. Like I just said, the seller hires a listing agent to represent them, and that's the name you're going to see on the sign. So they're going to be representing their client, who is the seller. Now, some agents might say, I can represent both. I can represent both the buyer and the seller. Well, in my opinion, you can't logically represent two people who have conflicting interests properly. So I always say, if I have a listing and I have a buyer who's interested in my listing, I'm going to bring in another agent to represent my buyer, just to make sure that both of my clients are represented fairly. So don't call the name on the for sale sign. Even if you don't have a contract with me, call me anyways. It's better to have somebody who's on your side. So that is another lesson. There's the other, conundrum of, well, buyer agency, how much is this going to cost me? What does this mean? So the way that it works is the seller decides to sell their house. If they hire a realtor to sell their house, the realtor is going to put it on what's called the MLS, or the multiple listing service. And in order to entice buyers and buyers agents to bring their buyers to their house, the seller is willing to pay some, if not all, of my buyer agency fee. So it's incorrect for an agent to say, oh, I work for buyers for free, because at the end of the day, me as a buyer's agent, I'm still getting paid. It's just, if you're seeing these houses on realtor.com or Trulia or on my Realty Executives website, 9 times out of 10, actually 10 times out of 10, it's on the MLS, and my fee is covered, if not some, most, if not all, of my fee is paid. So the only time that comes into question is if you're looking at a for sale by owner. There is no agent on the listing side, and the seller has not agreed to pay any agents in the transaction. So that's the only time when a buyer's agent fee comes into question, is if you're looking at a for sale by owner. So now I've talked about a lot of, myths and mistakes and don't do this and don't do that, but let's talk about things that make me as a buyer's agent really, really happy. I love it when buyers bring along any and all decision makers. So that's parents, that's a spouse, that's your kids. The way that the market has been lately is it moves very quickly. So if you're going to just be looking at houses by yourself and think, well, then I'll bring my kids in a couple days and bring my husband and maybe I'll bring my in-laws. It just doesn't work like that anymore. Houses move very quickly, and so it's in your best interest to bring along all decision makers for every house that we look at. I also love it when buyers do their homework. I know that it seems silly, but hop on Google and Google map the houses that you're interested in. I can't tell you how frustrating it is when we're with a buyer, we show up to a house and they go, oh, I didn't know that it was next to a gas station. So it's a waste of everybody's time in general. And luckily, most of my clients are well versed enough that they either drive by the house or they look at it on Google Maps. But I try my very best to abide by the criteria that you give me. But a lot of people don't think, well, I don't want a school in my backyard, or I don't want to be next to a gas station, or I don't want to be across the street from a power plant. There's just so many factors that go into the location of a house that it's best to just Google map it yourself, drive by it, do a little bit of homework, so that when we're together looking at houses, it's as productive as possible. Something else that I really appreciate is when buyers put themselves in the seller's shoes. So again, if I'm your buyer's agent, I am representing you, but sometimes we also need to be catering to the seller in order to put your best foot forward and put you in the best position. So I am constantly in touch with the listing agent to make sure that we're abiding by, the seller's timeline if we can. We're doing what we can on the buying side to put ourselves in the best position to make the seller the happiest. So buyers who are flexible on closing dates, and those who also, again, put themselves in the seller's shoes of saying, okay, if I'm listing my house at $200,000, how likely would I be to accept an offer that's $30,000 below asking? Probably not very likely. So take a second, put yourself in the seller's shoes, and you will already be a leg up on the competition. And the last one, I would be silly if I didn't say this. Things that make me really, really happy are when you hire me. I can't tell you how appreciative I've been these almost past 5 years of all of the people that I've worked with. Now most of my business comes from referrals, which warms my heart. It's just so amazing that the hard work that I put into it, people see that and they appreciate it. So there's a lot of realtors you probably know. I think the number is at least 7 realtors you know. Just have a conversation with me. If I'm not the right fit, that's totally fine. But I'm here to help you get to the best position possible, whether that means moving tomorrow or that means moving in 5 years. It's never too early to start having a conversation. So I've talked a lot about being a buyer's agent. I can be a buyer's agent. I can also be a listing agent. But today, again, was more about the buyer's myths, mistakes, and marvelous moments. So thank you all for tuning in. You will see the link either here or down here or up here to look at my blog. That's something new that I've started. I like to just kind of get my thoughts and feelings out there, and in a blog is what I found to be the easiest way to do that. So check in. I try and do it at least once a week. Again, with the holidays and being sick, I'm a little bit behind. But yeah, I appreciate it. Have a great rest of the week. Have a great weekend, and I will see you all soon.